Scott, and I live in Muncie, Indiana.
Okay, and did you grow up here in Muncie?
Yes.
Okay, and then were you aware of BorgWarner as a child and before you started working there?
Not as a child, but probably in my teens, I knew what BorgWarner was.
Okay. What do you remember about it then?
I lived in the industry neighborhood, so I lived on a street, Willard Street, and the old Plant 1 was about 4 blocks behind my house where the railroad tracks were. So I knew of it as this big building where a lot of people went in and out of, but I had no idea what they were doing in there.
And you didn't have family members then that worked there?
No. My father worked at General Motors, or it was Chevy then.
Okay, so then you came from kind of an industrial family?
Yes,
a little
yeah.
bit. Okay. So moving on to your work life, how many years did you work at BorgWarner?
I was at BorgWarner for 28 years.
Okay, and then when did you start?
1981.
Okay, and then how did you get hired at the factory?
I worked at Ball Corporation. I got a journeyman's thing coming out of high school. I went right into a journeyman's thing at BorgWarner and got an apprenticeship there. When I got my journeyman's card, they closed the plant. And as soon as they closed the plant, I heard that BorgWarner was hiring, but they had a reputation of hiring and laying off and hiring and laying off. So I decided to put an application in anyway. And I was fortunate because in 1981, everybody that got hired never got laid off.
Oh, yeah, I have heard that, there are stories of people getting laid off, and I think I had read an interview that talked about that.
Yeah, 1983, they brought in another group, and they were getting laid on and off all the time, so I just got right in that little niche.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah.
And then what department did you work in, and what was your job?
I started out in a department called E3, and I cut gears, various gear cutting machines. They were older machines, oily. You would come in, and the first thing you would do is you would put shop towels all over you. You'd have to wade through sawdust because they had buggies that they'd put sawdust all down on the floor to soak up the oil. And you'd have to grind your own tools. If you're going to do tools that they had then, they didn't have like little inserts. You made your own tools. And they pulled the shavings out of the machine. So it was a really nasty kind of a job, very dimly lit. Remember all that kind of stuff. And then they brought in CNC equipment, Mazaks, which was automatic equipment, and CNC computerized equipment that had tools that you just put little inserts in. It was fantastic. And as soon as they brought those machines in, and I thought I was getting on the gravy train, they asked me if I would be interested in doing SPC, which is statistical process control. We had like control charts on our job, and I was always pretty good at documenting my sizes and doing the control charts. And they asked me, is that something I'd be interested in getting into? And I said, no, I'll try it. So that means I would get to come off the floor and go into an office and then start analyzing process capability to see how good the machines are, gauges. And I was ended up in there for 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to go back a little bit, did anyone help you get on when you put in your application for BorgWarner? Because I've heard a lot of stories of you had to know somebody to be able to get on there.
And a lot of times you did, and a lot of people in there knew a whole lot of other people in there. And I didn't know anybody in there until I got in there.
Okay.
And then I said, oh, you're in here. Oh, I didn't know you worked here. So I didn't have anybody saying, hey, man, if you put in an application, I can get you in. But I know there's a lot of families. You hear a whole lot of the same names and those kinds of things. But I was just one that kind of, again, just kind of got in there.
Lucky.
Yeah.
You answered this a little bit, but if you could go into a little bit more detail, what was the working environment like there? I mean, not only just the conditions, but just the people that you worked with as well.
Early on, I guess it wasn't very good for me. I didn't like it. Again, dimly lit, pretty dirty. It was a factory, so there was a factory kind of mentality. A lot of factory language, and I wasn't used to a lot of that growing up in a Christian home and those kinds of things. And a lot of practical jokes, nothing to get you angry. It's just the culture of a factory. So there's some adjusting that I had to get to. But then, I made a lot of friends and those kinds of things. And you kind of got used to the environment and the conditions. And, I just went in and did my job pretty much. That was early on. As time went on, the plant really, really transformed a lot. Lighting, putting in systems that would take the oil away from the machines, and coolant would come in and coolant would go out and be reprocessed and brought back into the machines. They had shaving conveyors that would take the shavings out of the machine and put them in a buggy, so you weren't walking through all those kinds of shave. You didn't have to buy shoes every 3 months and those kinds of things. And you weren't wading through oil. It got clean. It wasn't temperature controlled, but it was clean. It was a lot cleaner, a lot brighter. So I think they were trying to make the plant a little more competitive, I guess, because everybody was doing that kind of a thing.
Almost sounds a bit modernized.
Yeah.
Would you say that working at BorgWarner made you feel as if you were part of a community?
Most definitely. Even now, after, when we'll talk about after, but it's like family. You go to Walmart, or you go to Myers, or you go to Lowe's, and you see people that you were with, and it's like you never left. It's like, I just left you yesterday. So it's got a real good family environment.
Does that still happen to you today after 10 years?
Oh,
You
yeah.
see people all the time?
Oh, yeah. There's a BorgWarner Facebook page.
I've seen it. I posted there.
Yeah, and if someone passes away or something like that, they always post the guys that are going off the scene, and we all still kind of care a whole lot. Say, oh man, not him. Mm-hmm. Oh wow.
So it sounds like it was a pretty good community there. But I do wonder, being an African-American man, did you ever feel like any racial tensions or anything like that?
Not a whole lot. I guess my job took me off the floor and they put me in an office. And I didn't have to dress as in the work clothes that I used to have to dress in. Being in statistical process control, they sent you to Eastern Michigan and Knoxville for training. You went to go on machine runoffs and buying capital equipment and measurement systems and all those kinds of things. As a union employee, I got to go on all these things on like a company expense, and you go flying over here and over there. Then you come back into a plant and you kind of get the, why you? And it was not as much as me as an African American as you are a union member, but you're getting all these company perks. So it wasn't so much as color, because there was like 6 of us and we all kind of got treated the same way. So maybe if I wasn't in that, I could see maybe ethnicity being a factor, but I think it was more because of what I was doing that kind of separated me. Are you union or are you company? Are you, so I was kind of in between.
Okay. What would you say was the best part about working for BorgWarner?
I guess for me, again, it was the opportunities that were afforded to me through the training, and we got what was called a Six Sigma Black Belt certification, which is like the Heisman of quality control certifications. To go on machine runoffs and to travel and to see different processes and to be involved in companies' decisions and those kinds of things is not something that I signed up for. You were doing the work almost of an engineer, but you didn't have the engineer degree or those kinds of things. But it did put you in those arenas, and you learned a whole lot. Rather than I was just just a day, just putting them in, taking them out, putting them in, which would probably drive me crazy.
Yes. I had a question in my head too. So would you say, you said you were involved in a lot of the company decisions. Would you say that they really tried to involve the whole workforce in that, or just specific people? I mean, as a union member, you had this, but could a non-union member also?
Not too much. And the only reason I had say, because, not really say, but influence, is because I did the analysis And the analysis pretty much said, this is a bad machine. You don't want to buy this. It's not repeatable. It's too high maintenance and those kinds of things. Whereas if they brought a machine in and it was bad, and the guy on the floor says, I can't run good parts off this machine, he might get rolled up. He might go through disciplinary actions and all those kinds of things. And then I would be able to come along, not a knight in shining armor, but do studies on the machine and say, this machine isn't any good. Statistically, this machine will not meet the standards. So now the machine is considered bad because of the analysis, rather than the guy that runs it every day, told you the exact same thing, but he didn't have a whole lot of pull.
So I know you mentioned kind of the dirty work conditions near the beginning. Later
Yeah.
on, they're the best things that you described.
It wasn't a hard place to work. It really wasn't. It wasn't a lot of hard jobs. There wasn't a lot of heavy jobs. I think benefits, it was probably one of maybe 2 or 3 union plants that BorgWarner had left. We were one of the last union plants that they had left. So what is fair and equitable to the union wasn't always fair and equitable to the company, and where those two kind of met, that's where really the tension was. Not so much in what we did, but the compensation and just union versus company kinds of things. Didn't have a lot of disciplinary actions. You had people that got in trouble, but not a lot of firing and attitudes and those kinds of things. Or at least that I saw.
So yes, you were involved with the union. So what sort of activities did you do as a union member?
We went to union meetings, and they had outings, picnics, and those kinds of things. But pretty much by being in the area that I was work-wise more company than union. I didn't really do a lot of the things out on the floor. I did most of the things in the office, so I was kind of removed from that area.
So you didn't take part in any of the strikes or anything like that?
Well, if you're a union member, you are a union member. You pay union dues.
Okay.
And I think the one strike that we did have, we had a couple of kind of like walkouts. But the one strike that we did have, yeah, everybody participated in the strike. And it was kind of hard because you have your buddies in the union, you know, the guys that you work with every day. But you also have people in the company that you build relationships with. And it's like Republicans and Democrats. All the Democrats aren't wonderful people. All the Republicans aren't terrible people. So you're kind of in that mix where when they were asked to cross that picket line, you had guys at the gate that were really, really agitated because this is our livelihood. And you're going to go across. But their company, that's what they do. They had no more choice in it than we had being on the other side of the fence. So I was in a position where, you know, you kind of look at both sides. So it made it real difficult. And fortunately, there wasn't any violence, no real problems. But it kind of puts you right in the middle of, there's some good people over here. And from the company side, hey, you know, company, there's some really good guys over here. And being able to see both of them, and in the middle of two people who can't quite see either, that was kind of hard.
That's funny that you mentioned violence, because I had a woman come into the library who used to be a truck driver, and she said that she would deliver things to BorgWarner. One time she had to go through a picket line, I guess, or through a strike, and she said they did get violent with her, and she was scared. I don't know, though. I kind of wonder if this was before your time.
And maybe it was before my time. The last one, they they maybe threw some nails out, anything like, but there weren't any axe handles and those kinds of things. And violence, it may be cultural. I'm an African American man, and if we have people from Ball State come into our neighborhood and take pictures because we do a lot of community engagement, and they were taking pictures, and someone came up and asked them what they were doing, and they came back and said, we were harassed. And I said, really? So you're gonna fight from a middle-class family. Someone, African Americans, challenges you and says, hey, what are you doing over here taking these pictures? You take it as harassment. He said, no, all I asked them was what they was doing. So unless, she got beat in, but if she got yelled at and cussed at and all those kinds of things, they do that in the plant all the time. So they wouldn't consider that violent because we do that with each other. So the degree of violence may be cultural. It may be, I'm not used to this. I feel threatened, but I don't remember the police being called out because of any, one being attacked.
She was quite an older woman too, so I kind of wonder if this might have been before your time. I
Yeah.
don't know. I didn't ask for specifics. She was very hard of hearing.
There were, back in the day, before my time, those were the strikes that I was hoping. I don't want to be a part of any of that, because back in the 60s and those kinds of, they fought. But back in those days, it wasn't, cost of living increase of 25 cents. They were fighting for their lives, for their rights and those kinds of things. And those fights, I think, got us to where we were today. And we argue over sometimes minimal stuff when they were fighting for something that really, made a tremendous difference. And I'm not saying our stuff was trivial.
No.
Just
no.
in case anybody's listening. I'm kidding.
Would you say that the company was a good place to work for families? Did it support and encourage family life?
Oh, most definitely, yeah. There was a lot of family. They had family day sometimes at the company where they would open the company up on a weekend, and you could bring your family in and take a tour of the plant. And by the time, they were starting to do those kinds of things, it wasn't something I was ashamed to bring my family. I wouldn't want them to come into what I had came into 1980, the 70s and 80s. But it was a place you could walk your family through and show them CNC machinery, robotics. They had machines that were doing the robots and all those kinds of things. It was very interesting. So they did promote that kind of environment. And again, the union had family picnics and all that. All those kinds of things were very much encouraged, I believe.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing something in the newsletters about visiting the Children's Museum too.
Yeah.
So you've said it, BorgWarner was very active in the community. Would you say that the company encouraged participation in these sorts of activities? And if so, did you take part in them?
That I probably wouldn't really know a whole lot about. If they did, I wasn't really aware of a lot of that. Didn't really partake in a lot of that. I did a lot of stuff outside the plant on my own. So I didn't really need BorgWarner to tell me how to get engaged in the community, because once I left work, I was already engaged, so I didn't need an extra boost. Someone who goes home and sits all day would probably take more advantage of programs that were kind of provided for them, but I didn't even look them up, because when I'm out of here, I got a whole world out there that I'm already involved in.
It's fair. I just remember seeing things like Toys for Tots and blood drives.
Yeah. Oh, now I did give blood. And it wasn't just for the donuts. I really wanted to help. No.
Yeah.
You know what? I didn't think of that, Neil. He knows. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a human video tape machine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We probably have to tell him to stop. Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
I'm going to move on to when BorgWarner closed. So how did you feel when it was announced that BorgWarner would close?
I wasn't devastated, but I was so close to retirement until if it was still open right now, I wouldn't be working there, that's for sure, even doing the things I was doing. But when they actually said they were going to close the plant, it took a lot of wind out of, I think, almost everybody there. Those, because 28 years, now what?
I've heard a lot of that, actually.
Yeah.
How would you say the closing of BorgWarner affected the community?
Well, you had hundreds of jobs, people with benefits, a lot of people that didn't have a lot of education, making good living wage paying jobs. And now all of a sudden you have a whole community of people who no longer have benefits, aren't very marketable because they don't have degrees and all those kinds of things, who have families, who have debt with a reduced income. I'd say it really hurt the community. It hurt us in a pretty bad way. Taxes and those kinds of things. It was devastating, I think, to the community.
Probably still so.
Yeah.
And now you've mentioned that you were very close to retirement. So how would you say that it affected your life and that of your families?
Well, my father was 91 years old when he passed, and he was 81 when he stopped working. So I'm always going to do something. It's like, well, what do I do now? Odell says, you go out and you find another job. You go out and you do this. So that's the kind of upbringing I had. They offered a 2-year degree. You could either start looking for a job or take a 2-year degree. Since I came right out of high school and went into an apprenticeship, I said, I've never been to college, so why not get 2 years of college? So I took advantage of the 2 years degree. I got a degree in human services at Ivy Tech. And that kind of changed the course of my life because I got more involved in community as a result of that. So I kind of attribute what I'm doing now, where I am, to BorgWarner closing, giving me 2 years of college, me finding out about human services and community service, and then getting in that area.
Could you go more into what you've been doing with the community since then?
Oh, as a result of that, I came out of Ivy Tech with again, a degree in human services, got involved in some internships with reentry programs into the community, and then became president of our neighborhood association. Since that time, our neighborhood association, widely, I'm very proud to say, has won 2 national awards for Neighborhood of the Year. We're going to Palm Springs, California this year as a finalist for Neighborhood of the Year for a third time. We've got community engagement programs with Ball State and Ivy Tech. I was actually named Ivy Tech Distinguished Alumni of the Year this past year, and became precinct committeeman in our precinct, and I'm running for city council. So all of this probably would not have happened had the plant not closed, and I took advantage of that opportunity. A lot of guys didn't go to school. A lot of guys just didn't do anything, didn't find a job, but taking advantage of that opportunity kind of set the course. So a lot of who I am is because of BorgWarner. So they'll probably be a part of whatever I become.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Now that it's been 10 years since the factory closed, is this something that you still reflect on, the closing and that sort of thing?
Oh, I drive by the homestead
Yeah.
quite often and watched it come down and all those kinds of things, and nostalgia.
Yeah.
And again, I wouldn't be there now if it was still there, but there's something still here from there. So, yeah, I think about BorgWarner a lot.
Sounds like you look on it very fondly.
Yeah. There's one guy, a friend of mine, he said, I would never go in that place again. He had a totally different impression, a totally different experience than I had. Our church, when it closed, they had a lot of file cabinets and all those kinds of things, and we had a child care center and all those kinds. They said, if you want some of this, come and get it. You can have these credenzas, you can have desks, you can have whatever you want. And the guy was going to our church. He said, if you go get it, I'll help you take it off the truck, but I'll never set foot in that place again. So those are the kind of polarizings. Same plant, but 2 totally different opinions of it.
Would you say that there's anybody, I know you've talked about running into people at Walmart and stuff, but have you made like lifelong friends that you still maybe, I don't know, talk to quite often?
Oh, yeah. We got Facebook buddies that we talk to all the time. And, hey, how you doing, brother? Such and such and such and such, and nothing to do with culture,
Yeah.
It's just my union brother that we've stayed in close contact with.
And do you know how many of them have relocated, or are still a lot of them in Muncie?
Oh, there's still a lot of them in Muncie, and a lot of them that have relocated have retired because, I'm 60. So,
You don't look 60.
yeah, I'm 60 years old. So a lot of them, I came in 81, 1983. Those were the babies. Nobody's too much after 83. So everybody that was there are guys older than me. So a lot of those people have retired and relocated and those kinds of things. Some of them not very far away. Some of them just went up north. They call them to the lakes or whatever. But a lot of them are still right around here in Muncie.
Beans. I'm going to move on a little bit to the community. Open. Would you say that there was a feeling that it was important to Muncie to have BorgWarner here?
Oh, most definitely. BorgWarner, Ontario, New Venture Gear, all those companies were very important because we were an industry kind of a city. And we had Frank's Foundry, we had Broderick's, we had all these old Ball corporations. This is what we were known for in the city. So they were very much a part of who Muncie was, I feel, at that time.
Can you tell me some of the differences you see in Muncie then when BorgWarner was open and all these factories that you mentioned were open between, okay, hold on. Can you tell me some of the differences you see in Muncie then when BorgWarner was a huge presence here versus now where, you know, everything is downsized?
Yeah, there's not as much, I think, community activity since the plant left. It's turned into more a collegiate kind of, not a college town, but a lot of young people. It's a totally different culture, I think, than when BorgWarner, New Venture Gear, and those kinds of places were here. Most of the people now are looking more into education rather than into skilled labor and those kinds of things. So I think the culture of Muncie has kind of shifted since BorgWarner's left.
Okay. What are the impacts that you think that you still see because BorgWarner closed?
There's still a lot of people who are working, but there are no $25, $27 an hour jobs for people who don't have bachelor degrees and those kinds of things. So if you don't have a certain level of education, your income is going to be a certain level. And as a result, your community is going to be at a certain level. And people are just too old, a lot of them, to try to get that education. And my father really never encouraged me to get an education. So these guys may not encourage even their children in how important education is. Get out there and get a job, get work, make some money, bring it home to your family. But the whole culture has to change for the next generation. And if I don't pass that on, then I'm bringing up a generation in an area that I was in that's no longer there. So now what does this people do? They don't have an education, and this opportunity isn't available to them now. So that's where we kind of feel like now we're in that shift where we really got to get people more geared toward education.
So would you say things have gotten better or worse or just different?
I would think they're a little worse, much different, but getting better now. It's a period of transition that I think our city had to go through, but I think things are getting better. Ivy Tech, again, Ball State, they've got all kinds of programs to help bring people in to help them prepare for this shift. More technical jobs. They're not going to be a whole lot of putting on and taking off. They're going to be, can you run this robot? So even if it's doing it, I'm going to be doing it in a different technical level. So I think it was just this transition period that we're going into, and I think we're kind of coming out of it now. We were in a pretty bad state for a while.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Muncie is very much reimagining itself. Do you feel that way too?
Most definitely.
Yeah, just having to go in a new direction and rethink of how you're going to move on into the future, but also think about how that past is influencing your future.
Yeah.
I think a lot about that, actually. Anyway, what do you think about the economic future of Muncie? Where do you think it's going?
Well, again, being on the Chamber of Commerce, I'm very positive about the outlook. We have businesses that are looking to relocate in Muncie. Muncie is trying to redefine itself, I guess, and present ourselves in a different way. What they're doing with downtown is fantastic. People coming into Muncie now seeing sidewalks and streets repaired and handicap accessible sidewalk, walking trails and bike trails and all the things that while they were going on, we were really griping about, saying, what are they doing all this for? But now that it's kind of coming to a head, people are coming in and say, hey, this is a pretty nice town, except there's not a sidewalk I can walk on it. But all those things are being taken care of now, so we're becoming more, I think, we can present ourselves better to people outside of Muncie to come in and say, I want to be a part of this community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like what's going on with the businesses, but have you guys thought about like the neighborhoods and that sort of thing? Because there are still a lot of rundown houses and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and there was a grant, I guess. Then we've torn down some housing and all those kinds of things, which are leaving vacant lots now in different areas. And again, Whiteley, you know, we're kind of the leading the charge. We've actually taken down some buildings and houses, and we purchased some houses and redid them, and they're rentals right now. But our goal in Whiteley is to make homeowners of these houses, to take a house and rehab it through Habitat for Humanity and different organizations, put a family in there, hook them up with path stones. You know, I can't get a mortgage. Well, we got people that'll help you get your finances in order, help you get a mortgage, and help you become a homeowner. And not only that, but we can't build these little 2-bedroom Habitat houses. People want, I've got 5 kids. I can't have a 2-bedroom house. So how do we bring a 3-bedroom house in Whiteley to replace this? And it doesn't cost you $185,000 and those kinds of things. So our neighborhood is working on those kinds of things. Community garden, Ball State is getting ready to do one right next to Schaefer Chapel. We cleared a whole block off for Union Baptist Church. They don't have a 501c3. So our neighborhood organization got the house from the city for like $1, and then we donated back to Union. So now they've got all this land that they're able to develop and do what they were planning to do, and they've seen as a vision for their ministry. So I think if other neighborhood organizations have asked us to come in and do like a little presentation on what we're doing in Whiteley and how they might be able to adapt some of these kinds of things. And I'm running for city council because the whole sixth district, I want to change the impression of the 6th district. People had an impression of Whiteley. They came into Whiteley and said, this is a dangerous neighborhood, it's low income. And people from Ball State were telling the students that. So when they came in, they were like, I'm coming into this. But we have a program where we mentor them. We put them with families. We go to church with the students. We take them to community meetings. We have them over for game night and come over for food and all that kind of stuff. And after that is over, they said, man, Whiteley is warm, Whiteley is welcoming, Whiteley is rich, Whiteley is resilient. All these kinds of, we changed the impression that they had of Whiteley. When you look around it, it's still, this is still my house. But you look at it totally different because of the experience that you had. So we wanted to change the impression of the 6th district and say this is a district and an area that has strong leadership, strong faith leaders, strong community leaders, precinct leaders. It's worth investing in. And we're hoping to be able to get that kind of attention to the 6th district in that whole area.
Oh, wow.
That was a mouthful.
Yeah, no, it's okay. That's fabulous. So you do definitely see a lot of these neighborhood associations following suit with you? Do you see them actually putting what you've taught them to practice?
Yeah, well, again, we're just kind of starting off working with the neighborhood, but the MAPS program, a Muncie Action Plan, where the neighborhood presidents all come together and meet, is a great program that's helping to get neighborhoods. We just need to get the residents, and like I told them, it's not the president, it's the residents. I can do a whole lot of stuff, but if the residents don't come on board, then it's just going to be me, you know, just kind of like you're out there blowing a whole bunch of smoke. But when you get about our neighborhood meetings, we have 75 to 80 people at our neighborhood meeting. So when you get that kind of a response, people start to take notice, and then people want to join in with different points of it that they're passionate about. I'm not interested in food insecurities. Well, how about education? We have an education committee. So, well, George and Francis, what about education? Well, community development, what about food insecurity? So you find where people's passions are, and you get them to come into the community and work in that area. And the more you do that, the more other people will say, hey, that's worth getting involved in.
Fabulous. Love it. So have you heard of the new developmental plans for the old BorgWarner site?
Yes.
Yeah, so what do you think about it?
I think it's going to be really, really good. Again, chamber member, we just talked about it.
Yeah.
What they're going to be doing is going to be kind of like a powder, whatever, but it's not toxic or anything like that. And it's going to bring maybe 90 to 120 jobs, not 400 or 500, but it's a really, really good start to redeveloping that area. And what they're doing with New Venture Gear, you know, the housing, just to see those areas not left desolate and something going in there is really, really encouraging.
Do you think it'll be able to utilize the workforce that's here?
Most definitely. Do I keep bringing up our neighborhood?
Yeah, no, it's okay.
We're working with Ivy Tech, and now Ivy Tech is really working with a lot of agencies to say, hey, we want to get your skill level up to when these jobs come in there, your soft skill levels will actually reach a certain, you'll be able to take advantage of these jobs. And if you don't want to be a doctor, go to Ivy Tech into their program and get these skills so when this job opens up, you're qualified. We're trying to do that even at high school. Our neighborhood has lunchtime table talks where we invite Ivy Tech, Ball Hospital, other businesses, other agencies every other month to come in. Muncie Central set up tables and banks and say these are the things that are available to you, and we want you to learn how you can get involved in this, because you can leave high school, you can go into Ivy Tech, you can leave Ivy Tech, go into Ball State, and come out almost debt-free and have your bachelor's degree in 3 years.
Now, do they help with paying for a lot of that too then?
They tell you how to get the Pell Grants and all of those kinds of things. And sometimes there's like a $50 something that we have an executive director, our neighborhood does, and Ken is working on now getting something that says, if you want to take advantage of this summer program that will get you here and $50 is the hang up, then we have sponsors that'll help you over that hurdle. And then after that, it's just a matter of helping them understand how to get and apply for these grants and see them through.
Well, that's pretty much all I have. Is there anything else that you would like to add that you've not mentioned or you think is a good story to relate?
No, I think you'll hear probably a whole lot of other interesting stories that I didn't tell you, but yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Sure. Go ahead and stop.